I'm Kalb, and I'm with North Dakota State University Extension. And we're going to talk about growing apples in North Dakota. So, if you know, I think probably some of you have had to hear me in the past, probably, and so you know I like informal talks. I'm not going to be lecturing you here. I'm from an apple farm. I was raised on an apple farm in Minnesota. We had about 350 apple trees, and it was a great experience, and I'll talk about that briefly here. But I want to get you guys involved. Is apples your favorite fruit? What's your favorite fruit that grows off a tree? Apple? There you go. You're in good luck. Anything else? Did he say banana? Banana. You know, I asked Kelsey, I used to grow banana trees. I lived in Asia for 7 years. I had a banana tree in my backyard, and they spring up from the ground. It's almost like a 3-year tree. And man, wait till you harvest a banana. My God. You got them, they're like in a bunch of 400 bananas all ripe at once. And so like you got to take like a hatchet to cut it, that big bunch, and then everybody in the neighborhood gets all the bananas they can want, just like zucchini in North Dakota. You know?
How long does it take peaches to produce? How old do they have to be?
Well, I'll talk about peaches in a minute here. So you think peaches are the way to go, huh, Murph? I got a story for you in a minute. Anybody else have a favorite fruit they like to grow besides bananas? I can't give talks on bananas or peaches. It'd be like a 5-minute talk. Like, don't do it. Apricots, wonderful. I love apricots. Rainier, cherry. There you go. Pears, love it. I love that cherry. I got a cherry tree in my backyard. I just love fighting the birds every year. Just arm-to-arm combat. As soon as those birds start flying that tree, I know they're ripe, and I'm going after them. I'm fighting those birds.
What type?
I just got an Evans Bali. That's the one to get, Evans Bali. It's a short type, and it's precocious. That means it's going to bear quick. You're going to have buckets of cherries after 3 years. Almost no disease problems, and the SWD hasn't found it yet. I just get buckets of cherries. I have a tree. I pick cherries for about a couple hours, and just fighting the birds in the meantime, and then I let the birds have the rest. So we just kind of share it at the end. That's a great tree. Beautiful white blossoms.
What kind of cherry was that?
It's a sour cherry. You can't grow a sweet cherry in North Dakota. Sorry about that. It just ain't gonna work. It's too cold here, man. So, but you can grow sour cherries. And Evans Bali is from Alberta. I always looked at Canada, if possible, when finding fruit trees. Like if it can survive the Canadian prairies, it can probably survive Bismarck, right? Any other fruit trees out there people like? Avocado. There you go. I never did that. Honeyberry, okay. Or AKA Haskcaps. That's the blueberry of the prairie. There you go. Okay, you guys are very fruitful people. How many people here have an apple tree? There you go. How many people here have a peach tree? Okay. That's what I want to talk about. I'll tell you about my experience with peaches. When I was like Kelsey's age, about 30 years ago or so, longer maybe, I was a county agent in Wisconsin, and I put in a demonstration orchard. I just got a word a few months ago that orchard's still going strong now. I was really surprised by that. So I planted a lot of trees that I wanted to show people what works, apple, and I planted a peach tree just to show people what won't work, peach tree. So about 3 years, the tree was surviving. It was Reliance. It was the hardiest peach tree available. And I'll never forget, I was like a Sunday afternoon. I'm walking in my orchard. all by myself, and all of a sudden, my God, there it was. That peach tree had a peach on it. It was a ripe peach ready to be picked. And I'm up there in the orchard all by myself. And I go, what am I going to do about this? It's got to be picked. So who's going to eat it? I said, you're right. I said, what the hell? I planted the tree. I'm going to eat it. And so I ate it, and I fell in love with it. The juice just coming down my cheeks. Just pure love. This is the best fruit I ever ate in my life. And then what happens the next winter? Death. You got it. But I love that. I love that peach. And so I said, I have to try it again. Same thing. Planted another Reliance peach. Got one crop, and then dead. So looking back, do I regret loving those peach trees and planting them? No. You know why? Because it's better to have loved and lost than never have loved at all. So I recommend peach trees, but you're going to get your heart broken. Okay?
How long has it taken to bear? Mine is
3
years old now.
3 years? Mine was 3 years in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Yep. A triannual. You could be onto something there. I don't know. Kenosha, Wisconsin, right by Chicago, kind of. I was a county agent down there. That was my first extension job, 100 years ago. I'm going to talk about apples today because apples won't break your heart. And they're still really fun to grow. They're fun to grow, fun to pick, fun to eat. This is a picture of my family, my two oldest kids with my wife there. And you know, I remember this day also. I remember going back home to Minnesota and picking apples on our farm. And my mom said, Tom, thank you for all this hard work you're doing. And you know what I told my mom? I said, Mom, listen, I should thank you. What a great time my family's having in the orchard. Fresh air, sunshine, picking fruits, eating fruits. It's great to have an orchard in your backyard. Highly recommend it. And beautiful spring flowers too. Can't beat that. Okay, here we are in North Dakota. This is symbolic of the North Dakota apple industry. One lonely, unproductive tree out there in the prairie. So in North Dakota, we are very proud of our agriculture, right? #1 in durum wheat, #1 in flaxseed, #1 canola, so high in sunflowers and soybeans. So what's that? Honey, #1 in honey. We just ooze sweetness out of this state, I tell you. But out of the 48 contiguous states, where do we rank in apple production? 49. That's pretty close. Wow, you're a very negative person, aren't you? No, we're 48th. We're last. Wow, we're almost got Wyoming, almost, but we are last place. Why? It's a tough place for people and apple trees. But I'm going to give you some tips on how you can be successful growing apples here in North Dakota. First, you got to get a good site. Fruit trees want lots of sun. If you can, try to find a place away from very windy conditions. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. I'm telling you the optimal situation here, okay? I can't tell you like how many bushels of Honeycrisp apples I've had fallen off the trees like a couple days before harvest. Fruit trees can't take wet soil. So they got to have good drainage. They can't have wet feet. Apple trees will die. And also you got to avoid the frost. Frost in the springtime will take your crop, and frost in the fall will turn your apples to mush. So look for that if you can with your spot, okay? You can make that happen. Give it a sunny spot that's not in a low spot. You can make it happen.
Do apples turn sweeter after the first frost? Is that a myth? Or?
Do apples taste sweeter after the first frost? I think that's primarily a myth. Yeah. There's some fruits and vegetables that the starches will convert to sugars under very cool temperatures. But for apples, I don't think there's anything meaningful as far as that goes. So listen, listen. You don't wait for a frost to pick your apple. You pick your apple when it's ripe. Okay? Otherwise, it's on the ground. That's it. Or otherwise, it's losing its quality and it's getting mushy. So forget about that 1% sweeter. Okay? And when's an apple ready?
Tell my wife to tell her.
Okay, listen, man. I got to talk to your wife? I'm not a marriage counselor. Just share her with the handouts. You can call me tomorrow if you want, or send me an email. You got my email. No, you pick an apple when it's ripe. An apple's ripe when you see this yellow background color, when it turns yellowish and it was greenish, or when you just twist the apple and it comes right off. Sometimes when you see a few apples dropping, that's a sign too. It's time to get going. Okay? But you don't wait for a frost. You pick it when it's ripe. And some apples are ripe way before the frost. Okay, where are you going to buy your plants? I like buying local if available. And our local nurseries get their stuff from Bailey Nurseries out of the Twin Cities and Jeffries out of Canada. Maybe Proven Winners would be another wholesaler. If I wanted to get 50 trees, I'm going to start talking to the wholesaler directly. You can buy plants from Jung Seed Company and Stark Brothers. They're national seed companies. St. Lawrence is a place out of New York that's famous for the super hardy trees. So if you want a tree that won't die for sure, go to St. Lawrence. I've had good success with the One Green World in the Pacific Northwest. And if you like some really weird heirlooms, Maple Valley Orchards in Wisconsin. I buy bare root trees. They're half the price of containerized trees. So buy your trees bare root. That's the way to go. Here we are, great town of capital city, Bismarck. We're in zone 4. That means in a normal winter, it'll get to be about minus 30 degrees. Please, don't fight Mother Nature. Don't say, oh, it's zone 5, I bet it can make it. That's like that peach lesson again. And I saw how many hands were raised when I asked how many had a peach tree. There's truth in that. Forget about it. Don't fight Mother Nature. She is fierce. She will defeat you. I believe with Mother Nature, I believe in holding her hand and walking with her. Cooperation, not fighting. She always wins. Okay, here's some apple cultivars, and I got more listed in the handout here. These are just some of the most popular ones. You know, Zestar is a very great early apple. Duchess is from Russia. So if something can survive Siberia, it can probably survive North Dakota. Prairie Magic is from Canada. Honeycrisp changed the apple world when it came out about 25 years ago. That's, as they say, explosively crisp fruit, sweet, stores surprisingly well. At our family orchard, we would charge twice as much for Honeycrisp as everything else, and we always sell out. That's a great apple for Zone 4. Harrelson, that was the old standby before Honeycrisp. That, I think, one of the easiest to grow apples there is. It's a little bit on the tart side, so it's great for cooking, but it's so easy to grow Harrelson. I don't know, does anybody have an apple variety that they really like? Yeah.
My mother had a tree in Dickinson, a Hazen Red.
Hazen Red. Hazen, I see that available. You like that?
30 years old.
30 years old, there you go. Hazen has, the nice thing about a Hazen, it's naturally a semi-dwarf tree. It doesn't get very vigorous. The drawback of Hazen, most people think it tastes a little mushy. So I think that's why it's not popular, is the quality of the fruit. But maybe the problem is they're like Marv here, they're waiting too long, waiting for a frost to harvest it, and then it gets all mushy. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
I had some Honey Crisp that weighed 14 ounces.
A Honey Crisp that weighed 14 ounces. There you go. Cortland. Wow, that's a nice tree. That's a nice one. That's kind of popular because when you cut it, it doesn't turn turn orange right away inside. The flesh stays white, right? Yeah. Did you have one? Okay, listen, Prairie Spy, what an heirloom. So that's kind of a late one, though. But it's delicious. You know what? The latest apples are usually the best tasting. I got married when I was 42. I told my wife the best are the oldest. Prairie Spy. Okay, what would I do? You know what? I would go to that St. Lawrence. And listen, we got this thing called Google. It's an amazing tool. I just go Prairie Spy Nursery. Even Stark Brothers might have Prairie Spy, comes to mind. But it's got super flavor, but it's a little bit on the late side. So be careful about that. That's a great heirloom. Yeah.
I got an old Macintosh, a Sweet 16, and my favorite is the Fireside.
Fireside. I love Fireside apple. We grew that. Those apples are so big and they're so sweet. They're like the best quality. Fireside. It's from Minnesota. My family orchard is like 13 miles from where all these Minnesota apples were developed. And Fireside was one of them. The guy who bred it, he said, this is the apple. In the wintertime, I want to sit by my fireplace and eat that apple. That's how I got that name. That's a great apple. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. A golden crisp.
What the people that we bought our house from said it was a golden crisp, and it was the color of a golden delicious, but it was not the same shape at all.
Oh, maybe. Okay, I never heard of that one. There's Woodars. That has a weird shaped apple. That's golden. And a honey gold.
Honey gold, that's what it was.
That's what it was, honey gold. There you go. Honey.
Is that a hybrid of Golden Delicious?
That may have been a cross with Golden Delicious. Honey gold's from the University of Minnesota. It's gold with a pink blush, and it stores well. It's great tasting. It's very sweet. Bore a lot of apples.
It would take like 2 years, it would take a year off.
Oh, it skipped production. And you know what? That's just the way an apple is. I can just talk about that for a minute here. An apple tree often bears fruit every other year. And that's because during the summertime, that mother tree, she is filling in her daughters, all those apple fruits, and she's producing the buds for the next crop. So if she's got a lot of apples to fill, she doesn't have that much energy to produce a lot of flower buds. So then the next year, there's not many flower buds and you have a bad crop. But then that next year, since there's no fruit load, next year she can produce lots of flower buds. And so then you get this alternate bearing cycle. So if you can, what a commercial grower does is thin their apple crop every year to get a more consistent yield. But that's kind of hard for homeowners. But honey gold, I picked that in the snow in Minnesota. Those are vivid memories, man. What are we doing out here with our mittens picking honey gold apples? My God. But it tasted good. Okay, I'm going to move ahead. Apples, when you buy an apple tree, it's got a rootstock. It's not a seedling. The honey gold is on a rootstock. And there's 3 major kinds. There's the dwarf, semi-dwarf, and standard. Almost all the trees sold locally in North Dakota are standard because they're the hardiest. Okay, but the problem with the standard apple rootstock is that those trees take a long time to bear in general. It can take 6 to 8 years before you get a good crop. So a commercial orchard, I can't wait 8 years for my first crop, so I'm going to use a semi-dwarf, and they've done well in Bismarck. I've tried dwarf trees. This is out at United Tribes. And you can see these trees are only about 10 feet apart. The dwarf trees just don't have much vigor. They haven't done well for me. So I don't recommend the purely dwarf trees. And you notice they're staked. This is a 3/4 inch conduit pipe on each tree. We stake a tree to prevent the wind damage. We want that graft to stay together, otherwise they'll snap off if we don't stake those trees. Studies have shown that when you stake a tree, it will bear crops earlier in its life and it'll give it higher yields. And you just use the conduit pipe, electrical conduit piping, 3/4 inch. Just go to Menards, wherever to buy that. 10 foot long, pounded 2 feet in the ground. Here it is right here, and you see here's the graft. That's the graft union. Here's the rootstock, and there's our Honeycrisp or Honey Gold, whatever. If you don't stake it, it can snap off. Mulching, gotta mulch. Why do we mulch trees in North Dakota? You tell me. To conserve moisture, precious. Moisture is precious, as we have 6-foot snowdrifts on our driveways. It keeps the weeds away a little bit. Another nice thing with fruit trees, it insulates the soil. In the summer, it makes it a little bit cooler. In the winter, it makes it a little bit warmer. And also, we want our trees to warm up slowly in springtime. I don't want a quick warm up of my tree because then the buds are going to break open early and they're all going to get killed. So I want a slow warm up. So like you mentioned, you like apricots. You have to mulch apricots so those buds stay before they don't bloom too quick. You get in an east-facing location too. But keeps the lawnmower away. And when I mulch a tree, I like the old rule of 3-3-3. It should be at least 3 feet wide. More is better. It should be about 3 inches deep. And you should have no mulch within 3 inches of the trunk, because that can attract meadow mice. They love bark. You put mulch right in there, that's going to be their new home. So no mulch near the trunk. Shredded bark is great. Rock mulch. Anytime I see a plant that has rock mulch, I start weeping for that plant. That plant is suffering. Rock mulch does nothing for a fruit tree, for example. It just compacts the ground. It adds no nutrition. It serves as a heat trap. It accelerates bud break. People who use rock mulch, if I was the tree commissioner of this town, we'd have a lot of citations going out, I'll tell you that. Cruelty to trees. Huh? Can you use grass clippings? Sure. They don't last that long, but yeah, anything organic. I really like shredded bark or wood chips.
Oh, grass clippings get moldy? I've had that.
Yeah, you see, you can't have it that thick. Otherwise, it will get moldy. And listen, why are you using grass clippings? Your lawn wants those grass clippings. It keeps the lawn cool, shades the lawn. Don't collect your clippings, man. If you got these clippings, use your neighbor's clippings, not your clippings. Come on. Your lawn wants those clippings. The same reason, your lawn wants it cool. You know, your lawn's soft. When you collect your clippings, you're punishing your lawn. Shame on you. Okay, you gotta water your tree, you gotta make a commitment. And it's a general, about 10 gallons of water per week for every inch of caliper. And the caliper for most fruit trees is measured at about ankle height. So it's usually about 1 inch. So usually it's about 10 gallons a week, but only if your tree needs it. If it's already got moisture, do not water it. Those roots got to breathe. So if the soil's wet, just walk away. Be happy.
I learned from the forester and farmer, we said to dig down, and if the soil falls apart, it's too dry. If it stays like a mud ball,
Okay, there you go. The old soil fist test. Yep. Grab your soil and squish it. Release the pressure. If it crumbles, that means it's okay, you can water it. But if it stays together, don't even think about watering it. Or you can just use a probe, try to go about 6 inches deep to get a feel for how wet it is. But yeah, don't, sometimes people have a tendency to say, my God, I spent $100 on that tree, you're gonna live. I'm gonna water you every other day, like it or not. Don't do that. Okay, here's like a watering bag you see in Bismarck a lot, or you can use like 5-gallon pails that you punch holes in the bottom and the water drips through. What about this white contraption? What's that thing doing? What's that do?
Keeps the deer away.
Keeps the darn deer away. That's a pretty short deer you're keeping away. Is that a pygmy deer you're talking about, or what? Maybe a rabbit. You know what? Why is it white? You're right. It keeps the sun away. Why do we wrap trees in the fall? I remember doing it with my dad. It was such a great father-son moment. Every fall, we'd wrap the trees together. I still remember those days. I thought, you know what? Okay, it's getting cold. I want to wrap the tree to keep it warm. Winter's coming. Absolutely, as usual, I was way off wrong. We wrap trees to keep the tree cool in winter. Huh? Yes. It's like Greg talked about those autumn blaze Freeman maples. Here's a maple right by our post office in Bismarck. On the southwest side of every maple or every fruit tree, if you don't protect it, it's going to get sun-scald injury from the winter. That's because in the winter, on a day like it's 30 degrees, that sun beats down on this bark on the southwest side, and it could be 77 degrees warmer on this side of the tree than on the other side of the tree. It can be so warm that those cells get active. And then all of a sudden, whammo, the sun goes down, it's below zero, and those cells freeze. And when cells freeze, they burst. It's like a can of pop in the freezer. It just bursts open, and you get these cracks. Fruit trees have thin bark. They're very sensitive. So we use white to reflect that heat. We want to keep the tree cool. Don't use black, use white. Okay, keep moving. And also keeps those, that's a pygmy deer, I guess, we're talking about right there. Or how about this deer? I think this deer, you see it's licking its lips? This deer, I think, was at United Tribes one day. I was planted 40 apple trees there. Came back 2 days later to water them. Every tree was eaten by a deer, munched on. So what's the answer? 22? You mean like that? You got it. College administrators did not approve my plan. So plan B, 8-foot tall electrical fence, not approved on a college campus. So then I had to use repellents. Okay, repellents. And that stuff smells terrible, like liquid fence, rotten eggs, rotten guts, sulfur, all mixed up, garlic. So I sprayed that on the trees. Man, you'd be surprised how well it worked. I remember taking a walk at night once at United Tribes. I trained a deer to graze around the orchard. I was shocked. There must have been 20 deer there all grazing around the orchard. They were trained. They don't like that stuff. But it's not foolproof. That lead solution is foolproof. Okay? Also, none of my kids would hug me for 24 hours after I sprayed that rotten gut stuff. Okay, speaking about pests. Okay, I want to stay on time here, right? Okay, pest management. Okay, I'm on a commercial orchard. I'm going to spray every other week. I got to have perfect fruit. Okay? I want perfect fruit. But you don't want to spray every other week. So we got to do other things. Like, first of all, just get a rake out and get rid of that old litter. Get rid of the old fruits, the old leaves. Get that disease out of there. For diseases, the most important time is when the leaf buds break. So if you only spray a couple times, do it just when the leaf buds are breaking open, because these leaves have no waxy protection on them. They're very susceptible to disease. If I'm going to spray with insects, I'm going to do it right after the petals fall. Not when they're blooming, you'll kill bees, but wait till after the petals fall, the bees are gone, and some of the insects pests start going after it. The apple maggot is the #1 pest in North Dakota, and this one's kind of a lazy pest. It's like teenagers. They like to sleep late. This apple maggot sleeps till around the 4th of July. And then she lays her egg, she punctures the fruit, and then the maggots grow inside. So one way to control it is you hang up apple maggot traps. You put some sticky tangle trap stuff on it, and then the mother fly, she sees this as irresistible. In a sea of green apples, she's got a rotten red apple she can easily puncture. But she gets the bad news that it's actually full of sticky stuff and she's stuck. So all you got to do is go out to your orchard every week and see if there's any flies there on the traps. If there's no flies, you don't have to spray. How about codling moth? That's the second most common one. That's a classic worm in the apple. And you know, there's only one thing worse than biting into an apple and finding a worm, right? Biting into an apple and finding half a worm. Okay? So how do we monitor for them? There's traps. We got to use, when we're fighting a battle, we got to use the weakness of the animal, of our enemy. And one thing about, I think, male insects, the more I learn, is they eat a lot when they're like larvae, like worm caterpillars, but when they become an adult, all they care about is having sex. That's all they do. They want to have sex and then die. That's the way a male insect lives. And so what the chemists have done is, okay, I can make a chemical of a woman who wants sex, a pheromone. You put that plastic vial in the trap, and boy, that man, he flies around, he thinks he's the greatest thing, joy is coming right to his life. And I think this got to be the worst way to die. He gets there expecting great joy, and he gets stuck in a trap. He sees a plastic vial, and he's surrounded by a bunch of horny men all dying together. Terrible way to go. Briefly, fruit pruning. We want our tree to be healthy, stronger. You're going to have better quality fruit, easy to manage. We're going to prune now is the best time. We can see the limbs, the tree's dormant, and when we prune, we won't spread diseases. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly here. Prune every winter, no excuse. What do we want to do when we prune? I want to get as much sunlight and air in that tree to minimize disease problems. And I want to keep the tree low so I can manage it. 12 feet is what I want. But this is the classic North Dakota tree. Yeah, never pruned. There you go. Terrible. If you want information about training and pruning trees, I recommend this publication. It's got great drawings and details for you. But I'm going to give you the quick and dirty way to do it. First of all, do it. People worry about, oh God, I'm going to kill the tree. This is not brain surgery. This is not open heart surgery. This is just pruning wood. The tree's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Don't be intimidated. Leaf buds are glossy and flat. Flower buds are fuzzy and plump. We want flower buds because we want apples. We don't want shade. There we go. I don't want vertical branches. They don't have fruit on them. Horizontal branches are very fruitful, but this is a weak crotch angle and the branch can collapse. So ideally, I want something like this, 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. They're fruitful and strong crotches. Okay, here's a quick and dirty way to do it. Most of pruning is absolutely mindless. Mindless. Your 10-year-old could go out there and tell you what to prune. At least that's what mine does. Prune the suckers at the base. These vertical shoots, we call them water sprouts. They just clutter the tree. We want our trees to grow out where they get more sun. If they want to go in, they're going to cross and we're going to cut it, we're going to remove it. So crossing branches are out. Here's a symbolic way to do it, and that's on your handout. We're going to take the suckers out. These water sprouts coming out. I want to keep a pyramidal shape if possible to maximize the sun at the lower area. So I'm going to head back some of those branches. I'm going to prune it just above an outward facing bud. So the branch goes out this way. Okay, vertical branches out. I want to keep my tree short. Tall branches out. Inward branches out. Horizontal droopy branches out. You do that and you're doing great. This is my favorite picture right here. Before and after. You see how open this is? This tree's happy. It's like it just got a great haircut. It's so happy. And if you're not sure you're done, you're not done. Do some more. I was taught this. You should prune so there's windows in that tree. So a robin in spring can fly through the tree. Yes, sir.
What do you think about trimming a leader? Does that kill it? Or
No, you can trim the leader. Otherwise, that tree's going to go 25 feet. I can't deal with a 25-foot tree. Good question. Okay, so you can do the robin test. Then a guy in Wisconsin taught me, no, Tom, you should do the cat test. You should be able to pick up a rangy old farm cat and throw it through the tree. If the cat gets stuck, you got to keep pruning. But I have to say, for the record, and I'm being taped here, that I do not recommend throwing cats in trees. Okay? You can break a lot of branches that way. Don't do that. Okay. Same with big trees, old overgrown trees. One thing about an old apple trees, you got to be realistic expectations with your old apple tree. Apple trees are like people. They can live to 100, but we start going downhill at about 40. So have a realistic expectation from your old apple tree. Same thing, we're going to reduce the height, like take down that leader, and then open up the tree. It could take a few years to get it going. Okay, there you go. There's an old apple orchard. It's like an umbrella now. Branches are low, full of sunshine. That's a mature old orchard. Okay, I want to thank the photographers here. And I don't know if we got a couple minutes for questions. Okay, here we go. Wish you have a happy spring if we ever have one, if it ever comes. It's coming? It always does. Who's got it? Yes. Okay, so the apple trees were stripped by grasshoppers, and your subsequent yields have been very low. Okay, well, the trees survived, and the grasshoppers didn't damage the roots, so I'm an optimist. So, and also, you didn't have a heavy fruit load, so that means I would pay attention to how many blossoms you get. And if everything else is good, you got good sunshine, good bee activity. And also, I should say, you got to have another apple or crab apple, a different variety, within about 100 feet if you can, or closer. If you got that, there's hope. And the bark's in good shape, the bark's not stripped. And how old's the tree? It's not as old as you, okay. That's good. But is it younger than 10? Okay, it's older. Okay, so it's mature. You can feel better about its chances. You know what? Trees are survivors. Trees are survivors. It survived that grasshopper attack. I would say, you can ask Joe this, but I would say you'd have to have like a couple years of defoliation, before you'd really start worrying about what's going on. So let's hope last year's grasshoppers were unbelievable here last year. I have hope in springtime. Watch out for the grasshoppers. Yes, sir.
So I had some apple trees get attacked by rabbits over the winter time last year. And they were probably 7-8 foot trees at the time, and it basically killed everything. But there's starting again from the bottom. It also happened I had some Nanking cherry trees, and it's coming up from the suckers.
Right.
Am I better off pulling them and starting over, or should I?
Right.
It took a lot of years to get them that tall, and,
Yeah, that's sad news. The darn rabbits, they girdle this tree, and everything below where the girdling occurred, that's the only thing that's living. And I guess they girdle it really low, so I got suckers coming up. Well, if this is a tree like from a nursery, it had a rootstock. And the rootstock, usually in North Dakota, is super hardy and produces super inferior fruit. So if you like, small apples that don't taste very good, you can keep those suckers. But let's say it was a Honeycrisp. You lost the Honeycrisp. Now you have the rootstock. And most people don't grow Antonovka apples around here. It's a Russian variety. It's super hardy. So if it was me, I'd curse the rabbits and start all over. That's what I would do.
that's what I was afraid of.
Yeah, go. Yeah, because you know what? Because you can just lose years by playing around with those suckers. Let's just move on. That's nature. That's the way it goes. That reminds me of a real quick story I got to tell you. That I remember I got a call once as a county agent. What's the best way to kill a tree like a rabbit? I said, oh, that's so easy. All you got to do is girdle it. Take the bark all the way around it. Just remove that bark. And the guy said, thanks, Tom. I'm going to go kill my neighbor's tree right now. It's a true story. Yes, sir. Fertilizing a tree. Okay, fertilizing a tree. In the big picture, look to see the general color of the tree. But then, is the tree bearing fruit yet?
Yes.
Okay, so then what I want to do is I want to see how much growth I'm getting each year from that tree. And you can tell the growth of a tree by, you see the youngest wood is very glossy, and then there's a scar right where the wood gets less glossy, and that's where the last year's growth ended. I want to see how much growth I'm getting off this. And I'm hoping I'm getting about a foot a year. It's kind of like on a bearing tree, somewhere on that. If I'm not getting that, then that can be an indication I want to give that tree some nitrogen. And spring is the time to do it. But if you're getting growth, it doesn't need it. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
Are there any good resources to figure out what kind of apple tree you have? I have a huge apple tree in my yard and nobody knows what it is.
Right, how can you find the identity in an apple tree? They were going to make a Mission Impossible episode out of that. Tom Cruise says it's too hard. Okay, if someone put a gun to my head and said, Tom, what is this apple tree? And it's an old tree, I would say Harrelson. Because I see studies done about heirloom trees across the Midwest, and it's surprising how many of those trees are Harrelson. So that's the one I'd first look at. But ideally, what can you do? You can go to you can kind of get a timing for is it early, mid-season, late? Does it have any distinguishing characteristics? Like let's say that Cortland, you cut it, it doesn't turn, the iron doesn't show up. Or does it have 5 bumps like a delicious apple? It's really hard because there's hundreds of varieties. So there's a scientist in Duluth, Minnesota who does tests, genetic tests on trees. But I think I emailed her, she never responded. I think it's like hundreds of dollars per test. So I don't know how much that tree's worth. If it's good, it's good. That's it. Yeah. Well, I'll just call it my family special or something like that. Okay, I want to thank you guys. We had a good time tonight.